the rise of the psychedelic mushroom. Hey, I'm Morgan Davis. I'm a health and wellness attorney in Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's talk about how to keep your business protected and thriving. It's been a while since we've talked about psilocybin and magic mushrooms. But the truth of the matter is, from 2019 to 2025, we have consistently seen every year the rise of legislation to somehow create a pathway forward for the legal use of psilocybin and MDMA and some other psychedelics like ayahuasca, ibogaine, peyote, etc. Psilocybin is the most popular piece of legislation. It's the most popular psychedelic that is often put forward as in these pieces of legislation. Since the start of 2025, so today's, March 13th, we're only 2.5 months into the year, there have been more than 36 psychedelics-related pieces of legislation proffered around the United States. So we expect it to be yet another year where this desire in our world is pushed forward. We as consumers are saying we want access to this again, and we don't want it to be regulated as completely off limits. I get a lot of calls about what's legal, what's not legal, what's decriminalized, what's a low enforcement priority, what all these things mean. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But something that's really exciting, the National Institute for Health recently did an analytical study on the rise of all this legislation and what that's going to mean down the road. And they compared it to the rise of marijuana legislation that ultimately led to what we now see as a huge legalization across the U.S. of medical cannabis and recreational cannabis, and then ultimately hemp. And the NIH study predicts that by 2033 to 2037, all 50 states will have in some form or another legalized psychedelics. Now, when they say psychedelics, their study focuses on psilocybin and MDMA. But that's incredible to think about. It's 2025. By 2033, we could live in a country where most of the psychedelics that most of us have lived with our entire lives as being very illegal, like go to jail illegal, will be legal in some form or another. But what does legal mean, right? So we have to look at the terms of legalization, decriminalization, and low enforcement priority. Legalization for most people think of as, hey, that means it's completely legal. I can use it, I can buy it, I can sell it, whatever. I'm not going to get in trouble for it. That has not been what's been proposed in most of the legislation, right? Most of the legislation around psilocybin focuses on legalizing it for a medicinal use, whether it be through a therapy environment. So for example, you might go to a therapist or a office that specializes in this kind of drug therapy and use psilocybin along with talk therapy or some other form of therapy. Or also you may be prescribed it by a licensed therapist who's licensed under the state to issue such prescriptions. Again, that would be in line with what we saw happen with medical cannabis, right? We know that psilocybin, in many studies put before the NIH and other government agencies, shows that psilocybin and MDMA can be used to treat things like post-traumatic stress disorder. MDMA, in fact, was originally designed as a couples therapy drug by pharmaceutical companies. So there are recognized medical uses, or at least there are ideas out there that these have recognizable medical uses. So most legislation focuses around creating a pathway forward for the medical use of these products. There has been a few cities and a few states that have decriminalized psilocybin. And that decriminalization can look like a few things. It can look like actually making it legal for individuals to possess and or use and or grow at their home psilocybin. So magic mushrooms, right? They're growing them in their home, they possess them, they can gift them to a friend. None of those states have created a pathway for a commercial use where you can, as a business, make them, sell them, and manufacture them, right? Or manufacture products using magic mushrooms or psilocybin. So decriminalization can look like, hey, I can now possess it and I can't get in trouble. It can also look like what's called a low enforcement priority. That means local law enforcement has announced, and this is what happened in Colorado originally before they moved to a different scenario, that psilocybin was going to be the lowest priority for them in terms of enforcement. That does not mean that it's legal. If you are in a place where they say it's a low enforcement priority, doesn't mean it's legal. Doesn't mean they've changed the law. It can still be a felony to possess it. You can still go to prison over it. But they are not targeting it. They're not spending money on it. They're not spending resources on it. But if you get pulled over for a DWI and you got a bag of mushrooms sitting in your console that they can easily see, they're probably still going to charge you with it. Now, whether or not you ultimately can be prosecuted for it and convicted, different story. Again, low enforcement priority means they're not looking for it, they're not spending money on it. Doesn't mean it's legal. So the call I get all the time is, hey, I live in a state or city, fill in the blank, where it's a low enforcement priority. So it's legal, right? No, it's not. Well, I see a bunch of companies out here selling products online with psilocybin. Isn't that legal? No, it's not. Well, how are they doing that? They're doing that illegally. Well, how can I do that? Well, if you are willing to do it illegally, then you can do it just like they can do it, just like anybody else can. But it in no way is legal commercially to possess, manufacture, or sell psilocybin or MDMA anywhere in the United States at this moment as a commercial venture. Whether that means you as a person growing it at your home and selling it to your buddies, that's a commercial transaction, right? Some places will allow you to gift it to your friends, but not sell it. Why is this important? We talk a lot of time in the cannabis industry about like the legacy cannabis industry, what used to be referred to as the illicit cannabis industry. All the people who participated in and supported the cannabis industry before it became legal. Those people who put their necks out there and believed in it and wanted to engage in it long before the law said they could. And now some of them are having the chance to get into a regulated market that's legal. There's also a lot of infighting about the fact that some of them are kept out because they got felony charges and felony convictions and they can't get in the market now, and that's unfair. And I couldn't agree more. It is unfair. That said, just because we believe something should be legal, just because we believe that something is efficacious, just because we believe that we should have access to it, doesn't mean that the law agrees or that the law has been changed yet. So what do you do about it? One, if you really, really care, go move someplace where you can personally use it and or have access to it medically. Start advocating for it in your home state. There are tons of advocacy groups. Go find one, become part of one. And understand that if you choose to pursue this route commercially, there is no protection for you right now. And getting caught very well may result in your criminal conviction and all the lovely consequences that come from that, which I certainly hope that that is not the case. I hope that we're all sitting here in less than 7 years saying, hey, look, it's all legal now, and everybody who's an adult has access, and good for us. We didn't make the psychedelic industry fight nearly as hard as the cannabis industry had to. In the meantime, if you find yourself in a position where you've got questions about psychedelics, about psilocybin, about MDMA, about the laws in the state of North Carolina or the commercial uses in other places, feel free to give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about what's legal, what's not legal, and your pathways forward.